And you know about a Hall of Fame. We could call this the Hall of Faith. It's like a Hall of Fame of faith, the heroes of our faith. Okay, so we will get to them, but let's review a little bit what we did last time. So first of all, what is faith? Faith is believing. Believing what? Believing what God says, and of course what Jesus says. And not just believing it and sitting, but acting on it or obeying. So faith is believing and obeying. Okay, last time we began in Hebrews chapter 11 at the beginning, and our first hero of faith was Abel, who's a hero because he offered a better sacrifice, and he's still a hero even though he was killed by his brother Cain, but he's our hero anyway. And then we had Noah. Noah, why is he a hero of faith? Because he believed what God said. God said it was going to flood, and it did. Noah believed it, but he didn't just sit. He believed and obeyed because he built the ark, which he was told to do. And then we had Abraham, who's a hero of faith because he believed what God said. God said, I'm going to give you a land, but you have to go to it. So he obeyed by going out to this land, the promised land. Okay, so we had those three. And then we talked about Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. God is often called in the Bible the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. That's because Abraham and Sarah had a son named Isaac. Isaac married Rebekah, and they had a son named Jacob, and Jacob married Rachel. So then we get to Jacob. Now he had a lot of sons. In fact, he had 12. So there you see Abraham was the father of Isaac. Isaac was the father of Jacob. Jacob was the father of 12 sons and at least one daughter as well. But there are 12 boxes there. I didn't give you all their names because you don't need to memorize them, but you could if you'd like to. Anyway, the second youngest son was Joseph there. So he was the second youngest son of Joseph. Now, Joseph and his 11 brothers are the reason that the Israelites ended up in Egypt. Of course, you know about the Exodus, how they came out of Egypt. You've heard about Moses, who we're going to talk about in a minute. But first of all, we have to say how they got into Egypt in the first place. Did you ever wonder about that? Well, you probably know, because you probably know that Joseph's brothers were jealous of him and they sold him into slavery in Egypt. And Joseph actually succeeded in Egypt. He had a pharaoh who was a reasonable pharaoh, and he became the right-hand man. He was governor over all of Egypt. But his family came to eventually, and they had children, and their children had children, etc., etc. So they got to be a lot of people there, Israelites, in Egypt. And then the pharaoh that Joseph worked for died. And along came years later, there was another pharaoh who didn't know about Joseph, and he was not a reasonable pharaoh. So that's where we get to in the record now, to the Exodus, which you've heard of. It's actually the second book of the Bible, Genesis, Exodus. And you can see that it has EX at the beginning, like the word exit there. That's what it means, going out. Exit is where you go out. Exodus is when they went out of Egypt. They left. Okay, so who is the man who led them out? Of course, Moses. And he is our next hero that's mentioned in Hebrews chapter 11. We're not doing all the heroes in Hebrews chapter 11 because there are a lot. But anyway, we'll do Moses because there's actually a lot written about him in this chapter. Okay, so the Pharaoh who didn't know Joseph had made an order that all the Hebrew babies, the Israelite babies who were born, if they were male, they had to be killed. So what did Moses' parents do? Let's read this. By faith, or believing, Moses' parents hid him for 3 months after he was born. They saw that Moses was a beautiful baby, and they were not afraid of Pharaoh's order. And then you probably remember the record, the account of how Moses' parents put him in a basket in the Nile River, like in the picture there, and Pharaoh's daughter came along and found this beautiful baby, and she decided to raise this baby. Okay, what happened next with Moses, our hero of faith? By faith or believing, Moses, when he grew up, refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter. He chose to suffer with God's people than to enjoy the passing pleasures of sin because he was looking for the reward. Well, what is the reward? Of course, the reward is the kingdom that we will share with Moses and these other heroes of faith as well. That's what he was looking forward to. That's what we're looking forward to. Okay, back to Moses. It goes on, by faith or believing, Moses left Egypt without being afraid of Pharaoh's anger. He continued strong, as if he could see the one who is invisible. By faith or believing, he kept the Passover and sprinkled blood on the doors. I think you probably remember that, how the Passover was the time when the angel passed over those houses that had the blood on the doors, and the angel didn't kill the firstborn son in those houses because of the blood on the doors. Okay, next, what happened with Moses, our hero of faith? By faith or believing, the people crossed the Red Sea as if it were dry land. When the Egyptians tried it, they were drowned. I think you remembered that account. Okay, Hebrews chapter 11 says, all these people died in faith or believing. They did not receive what was promised because God had provided something better for us so that they would be made perfect together with us. So we are going to be made perfect together with Abel and Noah and Abraham and Moses and Joseph and Abraham, Isaac and Jacob, and all these other, where we will share the reward in the kingdom with them. And guess what? You're going to be able to meet all of these heroes of faith. And you can maybe say to Abraham, I learned about you and you were my hero back in the time, the evil age time. You can say that to Abraham in the future.